Hey guys, it is Wingy here, and welcome to a brand new episode of Why You Should Watch, the series where I talk about something and why you should watch it. Self-explanatory, dead easy to pick up. So a little while ago, you may remember, if you've seen it, if you haven't, why not? Go and watch it. I did a review talking about, or at least a why you should watch, about the new anime Transformers series War For Cybertron. Now I spoke about the first part, which was Siege, and now in this part I'm going to be talking about the second chapter, which is known as Earthrise. Why it's called Earthrise when Earth doesn't rise, I don't know. At least in the first one there was in fact a siege. But I thought I would talk about this because I've been watching it the last few days. I've been enjoying it a hell of a lot. And I do think that War For Cybertron so far is a very, very, very good Transformers series. I still do have my issues with it. So I'm going to start with the positives. Now, the look of this thing, like in the first part, is phenomenal. I think this series looks great. The animation, the character designs, the location work. I say location. It's not real. It's all CG, but you get the point. Basically, the thing just looks really, really good. It looks really pretty. It looks exactly like the Transformers. And again, like I mentioned in the first part, I still love the fact that the characters aren't clean cut. I like the fact that they are damaged. But what I especially liked about this series was we go to various different locations. Alright, admittedly, it isn't just Cybertron like it was in the first part, but you go to various different space stations owned by various different creatures or different fractions and what have you, and each one is unique, each one is individual. There is quite a few throwbacks and callbacks to previous Transformers series in this, in terms of designs. I love it. I think as a Transformers fan, and listen, I am a fan, but I'm not someone who knows every single little detail, but I think, most of the references that they were throwing out there visually, which I thought was fucking awesome. The voice work, for the most part, I think is pretty solid again. I think there's some characters who are definitely voiced better than others. I feel like Megatron especially, his voice acting has really come into its own. He definitely feels intimidating and threatening and powerful, and you feel like him as a character has really grown and is probably the driving force of this series up to this point. That was an element that really surprised me. I think Megatron almost in a way comes across as the main character in this, which is weird considering, well, he's Megatron, he's the bad guy. But it's interesting that a series like this will show you Megatron in a way where you just see him as somewhat vulnerable, but you can kind of see where he's coming from at the same time. Now in the first series that was definitely the case as well. In here, I'd say you don't see really as much where he's coming from because he does some pretty shady shit in this series, like properly bad stuff if you're a Transformer. Even if you're a Decepticon, it's bad. But he still has that vulnerability there about him, and there's a couple of times in this series where his morals are tested and whether he is still the same Megatron from before the war and all this sort of stuff. It's quite an interesting concept. On the flip side of that, you've got Optimus Prime. Now, I said in my first part that I thought he was naive, he was a really bad leader, and that the voice acting was terrible. Now, what I will say is this. On the one hand, I do feel like the characterization of Optimus Prime has improved slightly from the Siege story. The reason why I say this is because Optimus realizes that he made some mistakes in the past. He feels like he's growing from them. Throughout this series, he's trying to rectify some of those mistakes. And yeah, for the most part, I can kind of see Optimus growing more into the traditional Optimus Prime. The problem is, the guy's still a fucking idiot. Now, this is a thing that really frustrates me about this series. For something that can get so much of the Transformers franchise correct, the fact that you fucked up Optimus Prime twice now in what, the 6 episodes of series, this is the second series, so in 12 episodes you fucked Optimus Prime, the most famous Transformer, the most beloved Transformer. He's the one you don't get right. If there's some obscure character like fucking, I don't know, Cup or Cog, if you fuck them up, fine. But Optimus? Really? You know, some people will tell me you need to wait for the character development and for the end of the story and then he'll be the proper Optimus Prime. And listen, there's some times where it's not a case of being naive and you need to learn from those mistakes. There are aspects of that in this, but there's certain decisions that Optimus makes in this series that in the context of the universe make no fucking sense. The only reason why those decisions are made is because, well, we still need Optimus and Megatron alive at this point. So if Optimus kills Megatron, then the series can't really carry on. But don't write the series to get into those positions where Optimus could just leave Megatron for fucking dead. I understand where Optimus is coming from, where he's like, all life is precious and blah blah blah, but there's certain moments where it's like, you literally have the opportunity to kill him here. Megatron even fucking says to him, if you just walk away right now, I'm impaled on this thing, like, you win the war. And he doesn't do it. Like I say, from the context of looking inwards, obviously you're not going to kill off Megatron at this stage. But the fact that you would even write in that scenario, like I just said, is baffling to me. And what makes it worse is that Optimus's voice acting, I feel, has gotten worse in this second series as well. I think I said in the first part as well, like, the way that Peter Cullen's Optimus, when he does the dramatic speeches, that's kind of how this Optimus talks constantly. But he's doing a very dodgy impression of Peter Cullen. More so in this series, where there's a couple of times where it just sounds like a guy with a mild Peter Cullen twist on it. Especially when he gets angry, he's very, like, Christian Bale Batman level of grunt. I don't want to keep ripping on Optimus, but I have to address it because Optimus is my favourite Transformer, and for me is the weakest part of the show, and I just don't understand how the fuck that has happened. Another thing that I will say is a weakness about this second series is because it's split up, so it's not just on Cybertron, we're dealing with people who are on Cybertron as well as Autobots who have gone elsewhere. It kind of feels like they're two totally separate things and the story can't really juggle both of them at the same time. It feels like 1 minute we're dealing with this stuff, the next minute we're dealing with the stuff over here, and there isn't really a balance there. And it's a shame because I think I said in the first part again that there's some characters that really stood out to me in this second series. They're not even in it really. And listen, the Transformers have a big ensemble cast, I am aware of this, but it's about balancing. I feel like this series just flat out ignores certain characters that were really fucking awesome in the first series and just does nothing with them. I think Alita 1 has some good moments in this series, don't get me wrong, but she's very much pushed to the side in this series, which I didn't particularly like. Same with Jetfire. I thought Jetfire was the strongest character in the first series. I don't think he has more than 3 minutes worth of dialogue in this entire series this time around. A character like Ratchet, I thought was incredible in the first series. I loved what they did with his character in this. I think he has a brief cameo and that's about it. And listen, like I say, they are going to focus more on other Autobots and other Decepticons, what have you, and I get that, but they could have found that middle ground a little bit better as opposed to this stuff. This is more important to the overall thread of the thing, so we'll focus on this more, but we'll come back to this every now and again. It felt like there was chunks missing. But in terms of fan servicey stuff, which is the stuff that I love, this show was fucking awesome, especially in episode 5. Now the reason why I point this out, and I will say spoiler warning here because this is something that yes is in the trailer, however I'm not really wanting to spoil it for people who haven't yet seen it, and I would advise if you haven't watched the trailer for Earthrise, fucking don't. I wish I hadn't, because I wish I hadn't seen this. I wish it was just a surprise. Both Optimus and Megatron in this episode are talking to two separate characters who are trying to motivate them in totally different ways. And what I loved about this episode was that it was so fucking effective. Not only because Optimus is talking to Skylynx, who is a very oddly shaped and designed Transformer, who in this is described as someone who, I don't know about him in other Transformers lore, so I do apologise, but he's a really interesting character in this because he was banished to the Dark Universe, I think it's called, and he's redeemed himself, and he's talking to Optimus about the matrix of leadership and what he must do and his stamp on the universe and all this sort of stuff, basically giving Optimus the kick up the arse that he needs. Then on the flip side, why did the trailer spoil this? Megatron has Galvatron. Now, if you are watching this as someone who just watches my videos for the sake of watching my videos and has not a fucking clue about Transformers, you probably will not understand why that is so impactful. However, Galvatron, for those who don't know, is Megatron. Essentially, he is a future version of Megatron, and there's multiple different versions of Galvatron in various different timelines and all this sort of stuff, depending on which version you read, but typically Galvatron is like an upgraded version of Megatron. The first version that we see is where in the 1986 movie, Megatron is more or less fatally wounded. Unicron, the big planet-sized Transformer, finds him and upgrades him into Galvatron, who then goes on to lead the Decepticons and fight off Unicron, and then, well, no, he doesn't fight off Unicron because he's on Unicron's leash, as we actually see in this. I thought it was an awesome episode and definitely the best of the series. I don't know if we're going to get it, I don't know if we're going to see it, but I really hope that they will tackle some of the stuff that we get in the 1986 movie. And I don't know if this is supposed to be like a prequel to G1 entirely, or if it's supposed to be like its own separate thing. Well, I guess not, because spoiler again for the first series, but Ultra Magnus is already dead, who was a key part in the 86 movie, and we've not even been introduced to someone like Hot Rod yet. So I don't know, maybe it's going to do its own thing, but I would love for this series to eventually get to the whole Unicron thing and maybe tackle some of the things in that 86 movie. The Quintessons are in this series. That spaceship on the junk planet, I think it was, that's in this series as well. It gets a brief cameo. I just want to see stuff like that because the 86 movie is part of my childhood. I've done a video on it already, but what I liked was that parallel dynamic where you see Skylinks clearly redeem himself and he's throwing that wisdom onto Optimus, whereas with Galvatron he's doing it for selfish reasons because he's like, I've just fucked my life up, you need to fix it for me. That's what I thought was really interesting. I thought it was great character development for both Prime and Megatron, and it was great to see Galvatron. The design was fucking awesome. The way he appeared again was a throwback to the movie. You get a brief cameo from Unicron himself as well. That's fucking awesome. And I hope in the next series, I don't actually know what it's called, but I hope we get something to do with Unicron more than just this. Scorponok was a big part of this series as well, which on the one hand I'm okay with because I really like Scorponok as a character. I think he's quite interesting, but at the same time I felt like, again, the balance thing, why are we focusing on Scorponok so fucking much when there's more interesting things going on Cybertron with Elita 1 and Jetfire and Shockwave and them sacrificing Decepticons for Energon? Like, there's so many things that this series should have focused on, but instead doesn't find that balancing act. And balance is a word that I've said a lot in this video, so I do apologise for bringing up that word a lot, but it just needs it. That's what this series needs. I hope I've not come across too negative in this video as well, because I did overall really enjoy this series. I did really like what we got. However, the more I think about this series, the more I get frustrated by it, because I thought it could have been so much more. But what we got, I thought was very, very enjoyable. I really like the action stuff. I really like Megatron in this series. I really like the direction of potentially where we're going with this series as well, especially with the dinosaur at the very end. I think overall, I don't necessarily know if this is better than the first series, but the reason why this is a why you should watch is because if you're a fan of Transformers, you need to check this series out because it is full of little tidbits, little pieces of fan service for you to enjoy. However, if you're not a fan of the Transformers series, maybe this will get you into the Transformers, because there's a lot of Transformers lore out there, but this sort of takes bits and pieces from all over the place and makes a new story with it. And I feel like if you aren't familiar, it's not going to be too much for you. I thought it potentially could be. It really isn't. It's a very enjoyable series. It's a very, very solid series of Transformers. However, what I will say is if you are a die-hard Optimus Prime fan, maybe give this one a miss. But if you can look over some of the negatives that I've brought up, then what you will get is a very enjoyable series. They're only like half-hour episodes, and there's like 6 in a series, so it's not a very long series either, so fuck it, why not? Like, we're in a lockdown again, may as well. In the comments below though guys, let me know what you think. Transformers, War for Cybertron, Earthrise. That fucking mouthful. Have you seen it? Have you not? Whatever it is, in the comments below, let me know what you think of it. If you enjoyed this video, then make sure you leave a like on it, subscribe for more. Social media and Patreon links will be in the description as always, so if you would follow me on any of those things, I'd absolutely love you forever. But until next time guys, take care of yourselves, roll out.